We are live, Ray, because it's time that we talk about this. It's happened. We've discussed the possibility for a long time now, and it's finally happened that Micah Parsons has been traded to the Green Bay Packers in exchange for Kenny Clark and 2 first-round picks. The Kenny Clark news just rolling in, that is the compensation. Kenny Clark and 2 first-round picks. Ray, this is perfect, right? I mean, it's not perfect for you, but I'm a Packer fan and you are a Cowboy fan. We can talk about this from 2 very different perspectives and have a very interesting conversation about it.
Yeah. Why don't you just start? Why don't you start, Chris?
I'm going to start and say,
you start.
I am so freaking excited to have Micah Parsons. Again, in my opinion, I think this is the next best, if not already the best edge player in the NFL, right? Myles Garrett still doing it. So like maybe he's not the best, but it's close, right? To get that kind of an impact player for 2 first-round picks, I think easily pushes the Green Bay Packers into that Super Bowl type conversation. The thing that's interesting to me, right, is Jeff Hafley from BC, now the defensive coordinator of the Packers, kind of moved us into a 4-3 style, a little bit of an old school defense with 2 behemoth defensive ends that we've typically have had with Lucas Van Ness and Rashawn Gary being those 2 guys. It'll be interesting to see how things will need to change with Micah being the more explosive, speed-oriented, pass move-oriented edge rusher. But again, I think we need to take a step back and just appreciate for a second how great Micah Parsons has been in his 4 years in the NFL. PFF grading wise, right? 1 season with a grade under 90 overall defensive grade, and that was his rookie year at an 89.8. So he only missed it by 0.2 points, right? We're talking about a guy that has at least 14 sacks in every year of his career, with close to 50 hurries a year as well, with a career high of 69 in 2023, right? We're talking about a guy that can play stand-up linebacker too, right? When you need him to, can play basically all over the field. Has the athleticism that he can even run in coverage at times, and he's done it, right? He does have 24 coverage snaps last year. This is a player that could do everything, right? And the Packers get him, add him to a defense that maybe it's not like an easy fit off the bat, but I think when you have a player that good, it doesn't matter. They will find a way to make it work, and they will make it work. And with a team that also has huge need at cornerback, the Packers have, right? Nate Hobbs is the guy we've added. We let go of Jari Alexander. Like, there are definite holes at cornerback. This makes those guys' lives so much easier, right? Like, cornerback lives are easier when you get to the quarterback faster. So it just makes the team better significantly. Again, Lucas Van Ness was I think he was a 52 graded player last year, 52.9. Rashawn Gary, 73. And every year Rashawn Gary has basically gotten worse since 2021 when he had almost a 90 grade. It's just kind of fallen off year over year after that. So am I concerned that the Packers haven't really developed talent or kept talent kind of consistently growing? Yes. But what I'm also seeing is we're adding the best player in the NFL potentially besides one of the quarterbacks, right? Besides the big 4 quarterbacks, I don't know if there's a player in the NFL as valuable as Micah Parsons, and he gets added to a team that's ready to win, right? Can't be happier about that. So, I mean, I just went on a huge rant. I'll give you a chance to talk because, again, I'm coming from the perspective of the Packer fan that's excited about this, but Ray being the Cowboys fan, go ahead, buddy. Sorry.
Jerry Jones swears he just pulled off a Herschel Walker, and in reality, he just traded Babe Ruth to the Yankees. I mean, it's pretty much the dumbest possible move you can imagine. Micah Parsons is in the discussion for the best non-quarterback player in the entire NFL. He's 26 years old, and you traded him for essentially what Khalil Mack at 28 years old was traded for, but not exactly, because you would anticipate that the Packers are going to be at the very least, or at the very earliest, drafting in the late 20s in each of the next few years. What are we doing here? I mean, what is Jerry Jones doing here? This is it just doesn't make sense. It just doesn't make sense for the Cowboys. We said this a few episodes ago that when you look at the EPA splits for the Cowboys defense, they literally went from the worst defense in the NFL on an EPA per play basis when Micah Parsons was not on the field to the best when Micah Parsons was on the field on an EPA per play basis. There is no player in the league that can have that type of impact on an entire unit of your football team outside of an elite quarterback. That's it. And they traded him away in his prime years for 2 late first round picks and, quite frankly, a declining Kenny Clark, who has fallen off in the last 2, really 3 years, who's turning 30 years old himself. And so the Cowboys look at this and say, well, we've had trouble stopping the run forever, and Mozzie Smith didn't work out, and so Kenny Clark helps us stop the run. Yes, in 2021, in 2019, not in the year of our Lord and Savior 2025. No, Kenny Clark is not that type of player anymore, and you can't expect him to revert back to his former form at age 30. That's just an unrealistic expectation. So, I mean, to put it all together, it doesn't make any sense for the Cowboys, but not a lot does make sense for the Cowboys from a personnel perspective when Jerry Jones personally gets involved in the team building exercise. As a team, as a franchise, as an organization, the Cowboys draft really well. Will McClay runs a great operation there. And that's because they do pull Jerry Jones aside and say, we're not drafting Johnny Manziel here. We're going to take Zach Martin. Hey, maybe we don't trade up for Paxton Lynch, just not going to work out. When they do that, meaning they put Jerry Jones in a corner, they make great personnel decisions. It's great. When Jerry Jones gets involved personally with contract negotiations and the like, things go south. When there's, when he trades or when he drafts Felix Jones instead of Chris Johnson, I mean, we can go way back in the time machine here. When he has a personal affinity or lack of for a certain player, it will cloud his judgment, and it's no longer about what is best for the team when it comes to team building. And this is just a perfect example. 2 late first round picks and an aging defensive tackle whose best years are not behind him by 1 year, by like 3 years, for, on a statistical basis, on a metrics basis, the most impactful defensive player in the league, if not the most impactful non-quarterback in the entire NFL at age 26. At age 26. Make it make sense.
I think there's an argument, right, that Myles Garrett last year was the most effective pass rusher in the NFL. Aiden Hutchinson is the only edge rusher last year that had a higher grade, and he only played 5 games. So 95 grade for Aiden Hutchinson in 5 games. But Micah Parsons in 13 games, 91.6. We're talking about 14 sacks, 12 hits, 44 hurries, 28 stops. Like we are talking about a generational player. We are talking about the Packers acquiring a generational player to pair with the offense that they have. And you have to remember, like, the Packers are in the situation they're in to be able to do this because they took a little bit of a different approach to team building, right? They're the youngest team in the NFL still, right? They have been for 3 years, and they are again. The receivers that they have do not need to be paid really anytime soon, right? None of them. So you don't have the CeeDee Lamb contract on the book, right? Yes, we paid Josh Jacobs, but okay, right? It's running back money. It's the equivalent of like your wide receiver 3. You talk about, yes, you paid your quarterback. Our offensive line is young and cheap too, right? Like, there's not really huge contracts besides Zach Tom on that offensive line. You look at the defense. Again, we just traded Kenny Clark, right? So you get rid of that contract. We let go of Jari Alexander. Yes, we have Xavier McKinney at safety that costs some money, but like, again, it's teams get in trouble when they spread themselves too thin and don't prioritize the positions that are valuable, right? Quarterback, edge rusher, receiver, tackle. Those are the positions that you want to pay, right? And we talk about the Cowboys. They paid Zeke. I still think you're kind of like, you had to say 10 Hail Marys after paying Zeke, but like, you're still saying those 10 Hail Marys. Like, it is still haunting you guys, these bad contracts that Jerry Jones puts you into. And again, it's why was Micah not the first player you paid, right? Why was Dak paid $5 million more than the next highest paid quarterback when you guys finally decided to pay him, right? Like, why do you keep putting yourselves in these types of situations, right? And again, from the Packers side, we can pay that. We can pay that. We have no problem paying that because, again, we've structured our team in a way where we're going to have talent for a long time, young talent for a long time, and not have to really worry about it. So huge win for the Packers. And I did pull up some numbers just for context again. So last year, again, you could argue that he was the best pass rusher in the NFL, 4th overall grading as a pass rusher last year. The year before that, he was 2nd with a 93.7. Just a reminder for people, he did not play edge rusher until he came to the NFL. This is a guy that still might be learning how to play the position. When I watch him play, I still think that. I still think that he relies a little too heavily on just pure speed at times, right? And not necessarily an array of pass rushing moves. Has it developed? Absolutely. Is there more that I think he could develop? Absolutely. Like, this is a player that's not done yet. And again, like you talked about the Babe Ruth comp, like that's a little high fetch for me, but could we talk about this being Reggie White type impact for this team right now? Right? Because the Packers did that once and it led to a Super Bowl, like, quickly. To me, that's what this is, right? We were missing that player and we just got him in a big, big way.
Yeah, Reggie White. I mean, if you want to draw more consistent parallels, sure. I mean, that makes sense. It's not even like the Family Guy, like trading in for a boat, like, oh, pass on the boat because what's in this box? It could be a boat because, like, you can't even say like it could be a Micah Parsons because no, round 1 pick 29 is not going to be Micah Parsons. Like, it's just not. Like, it's just not going to happen. So the thought process, it makes no sense. It really does make no sense for the Cowboys. The thing to remember too with Micah Parsons is he had a high ankle sprain last year too. I mean, he still finished top 5 in the league after missing games and high ankle sprain injuries that linger pretty much throughout the entire season, especially at a position that relies on explosiveness, twitch, and athletic ability. You need every ounce of those spring in your legs to get to the quarterback at this high of a level. And that's Micah he continued that elite level of play despite being so hobbled. So it's a generational player that and you talked about the contracts, and that's a big part of it. And that's what happens when ego gets in the way. It's when you play favorites, you overlook the negative tendencies of even your notable players or your star players, like an Ezekiel Elliott, who had to face a suspension, who had a bunch of mileage and tread on the tires because of the volume that he received early in his career. You ignore the fact that he had a top of the line offensive line for his prime NFL years that made his life easy. You ignore the fact that same offensive line that Ezekiel Elliott was running behind also made Darren McFadden a top 5 running back in the NFL the year before you drafted Ezekiel Elliott. A 30-year-old Darren McFadden, who then was out of the league within a year, was top 5 in the NFL in rushing because of how good that offensive line was. But again, when you have stars in your eyes and you play favorites, you don't take a Jalen Ramsey type of talent at cornerback. You take the glitz and glamour of the running back because he touches the ball 30 times a game. He impacts, he directly affects the play. You start making these excuses or trying to justify your preferences and ignoring advanced statistics, analytics, all of the data that tells you that in modern football, these are moves you just don't make. You don't just get rid of prime pass rushers or elite pass rushers in their prime. It just doesn't work, especially for late first round picks. It's not like they traded him to, I don't know, to the Panthers or something. And I'm not even saying the Panthers are the worst team in the league. I'm just saying a team that like isn't on the doorstep of the conference championship for the last half decade. They didn't trade him to the Panthers. They didn't trade him to who's tanking. They didn't trade him to the Colts. They didn't look at a team and say, well, they don't really have a quarterback. We're going to trade him to Indianapolis. They traded him
NFC.
Yeah, they trade him in the NFC to a team that has knocked them out of the playoffs in recent memory in their quest to get to where they want to go. There is no logical justification for this. It's an ego move. Jerry Jones has an issue with the agent, who, by the way, is the same agent for George Pickens. So now you're looking at issues with an agent, a guy representing a player that you just traded a third-round pick for, made your defense exponentially worse, and he's on an expiring contract. So you're telling me that now the negotiations with George Pickens are going to be better than they were with Micah Parsons? Or now, a year from now, George Pickens is going to walk out the door and you just gave up a third-round pick for a 1-year rental of a wide receiver. So
for a year that you didn't even go for it.
For a year that you didn't even go for it. Exactly. Yeah. You can't call yourself all in if you get rid of your best player on your team for compensation that doesn't kick in until realistically make an impact on the field 3 or 4 years from now. When your quarterback, who you just signed a huge contract to, is going to be 35 years old. The move on any level makes absolutely no sense for the Cowboys. The timing doesn't line up at all. It makes no logical sense. It doesn't make any sense for anybody.
Just a reminder, everybody, we are talking about the Micah Parsons trade that just happened. The Dallas Cowboys sending Parsons to the Packers for 2 first-round picks and Kenny Clark, the defensive interior. And a really quick plug, we are All 22 Fantasy Football. If you don't play All 22, go to all-22.com and sign up today, or download the app on the App Store. Super fun game. Love it. Definitely should play. You can draft Micah Parsons and actually reap the rewards of what just happened. But going back to the conversation that we're having, right? If you were telling me, because you brought up the Panthers, right? And the Panthers just traded Adam Thielen for a pick. And some people might be looking at that going, hey, like, Adam Thielen was a huge part of Bryce Young kind of turning things around. But you also have to remember that the Panthers are in a situation right now where the more young talent and the more picks that you can acquire just puts you in a better position, and Bryce Young truly in a better position down the road. And you're not going to win right now. The Panthers are not going to win right now, but they're putting themselves in a better position so that tomorrow they are in a better position to win, right? The move the Cowboys just made shows me that, do they think that they're the Panthers? Do they think that they're a team right now that needs to tear it down and rebuild? Because they paid, like you said, they paid the quarterback who's going to be 35 years old. They paid the receiver. They've thrown money around pretty handedly to players that they think that they're in a win now mode. And you said it, right? We played each other in the playoffs 2 years ago. And we are a very similar level of competition. If you look at the sports books a couple days ago, I bet you that they're pretty close where they put the Packers and the Cowboys. So why would the Cowboys take their foot off the gas and basically reward the Packers and push the Packers forward? It's almost non-competitive, right? It's a weird thing to do when you're supposed to be fighting for a Super Bowl. And if you asked me, like, you don't make this move if you're the Cowboys trying to win, unless you have a plan to make further moves to bolster your team and make yourselves better in a way that maybe we're just not seeing yet, right? Like, do they take these 2 first-round picks and trade for Will Anderson? I don't know. Like, who's out there that they could go get?
No, they
right?
don't.
There's probably not something out there like that, which tells me that they're really thinking about making those picks, which, if that's the case, go trade Dak, right? Like, go figure out what team needs a quarterback and
you can't trade him. You're going to have like $90 million dead cap, and the contract is untradeable.
I mean, if you can trade Russell Wilson a year after that big deal, like, you could trade anybody. Like, yes, dead cap's a real thing, but it's also kind of not, right? Because guess what? The Broncos looked pretty competitive last year after we thought they were going to be bad for a few years, and they looked good. So it's possible. I think it is possible. The Broncos proved that you can make a move like that and still continue, but the Cowboys are going to have to do it quick, right? Yeah. And also on top of that, a part of me wonders if the offensive line is a reason why, right? Because if you look at the Cowboys offensive line, they've invested a few very high draft picks, 2 first-round picks in back-to-back years, plus the center and Cooper Beebe, right, into that offensive line. What if they went through this preseason and go, our offensive line is still not good enough, right? Like, we still don't have the guys to be a Super Bowl contender with this offensive line. Maybe, right? And maybe they're sitting here going, this line is going to take 3 years to develop. And by the time we get there, Dak will be out the door. We need to find our next guy. We need to find the next Micah Parsons, right? Like we shouldn't be paying these guys now and pushing for winning when, again, we talk about this stuff because we're all 22 and we know that offensive line really matters. Maybe the Cowboys looked at their situation and their offensive line and said, we really don't have the foundation to be a Super Bowl team with this offensive line. Could that really be a reality? I don't know.
No, because again, then you wouldn't trade for George Pickens. You wouldn't trade for a receiver on an expiring deal. You wouldn't trade a day 2 pick for a receiver on an expiring deal. Extend a Jake Ferguson that is tough as nails, but he's not like a dynamic difference-making tight end. And he does have, he gets injured here and there too. He doesn't have the cleanest injury history either. Truth is, they just don't know what they're doing. And it's a shame because they may be the very best organization in the league when it comes to the draft and actual scouting. They're great at it. And their behavior when it comes to contract extensions and pro personnel is just so far away from the level with which they draft that it all goes to waste. And that's a shame. It's like, again, the moves contradict each other at every turn. Signing your quarterback, trading for George Pickens, then trading away Micah Parsons. It doesn't, they don't, it's not a clear plan. It's not, the moves don't complement each other by any stretch. They're not tearing it down and then maybe trading back up or for a franchise quarterback because they locked themselves in with their quarterback for a few years. And you could look at the Broncos. Go ahead, look at them. Brian Schottenheimer is not at the level of Sean Payton. It's just not. And coaches at the level of Sean Payton don't work for Jerry Jones, which is why we're going now on 30 years where they haven't even made the conference championship game. Because while you can argue that, hey, there's a baseline level of coaching and there's very few difference-making coaches in the NFL, the ones that are the ones that win along the margins. Andy Reid, Kyle Shanahan. What other franchise blows 3 first-round picks on Trey Lance and yet makes the Super Bowl with Brock Purdy and Mr. Irrelevant? That doesn't happen with baseline NFL head coaching or baseline offensive schematics. It doesn't happen. That sinks franchises unless you have a true value add like a Shanahan, like an Andy Reid and guys like that. And those guys don't work for Jerry Jones because he wants it done his way. And these guys are good enough at their jobs and they know it to where they do things their way. And that's how you end up with Jason Garrett, Wade Phillips, a Mike McCarthy who didn't have a job, who was unemployed watching film from a barn. And then you have a Brian Schottenheimer who was never on anyone else's radar and was never going to get an NFL head coaching job, but was already in the building. And Jerry knows he can continue doing his way of doing things. And that's how you end up here because nobody can step up and say, no, this is not how you do things. You're not going to trade Micah Parsons because that's just not how we do things around here. And I get it. Hey, you own the team and you made yourself the general manager. You can do that. You're the boss. But this is what happens when there's no one around to rein him in or say, no, this is not how we're going to do things around here. And this is what you get. So the Cowboys window is officially closed. You could say what you could argue how open it really was when they made the playoffs for consecutive years, won 13 games those consecutive years, and were bounced in the first or second round. But that's gone. They're not winning 13 games with this roster. You're not winning 13 games by replacing Micah Parsons with 2 late first-round draft picks 2 or 3 years from now while your quarterback ages and everybody else ages on that roster. It doesn't make sense. It's an ego move. He wasn't budging on the negotiation, so he said, fine, you're someone else's quote-unquote problem now. And yeah, like I said, he traded Babe Ruth to the Red Sox. I'm actually not going to – I'm going to go a step further and say that is – I'm going to stand firm on that one.
Wow. Let's just remind people, right? We're all 22 fantasy football. Again, you could go to all-22.com to sign up today. We're talking about Micah Parsons and the deal that was just made, the Cowboys trading him to the Packers. And I think, Ray, we've said a lot. So let's wrap this up real quick. What other guys are going to get opportunities now? We know what it means for the Packers, right? Yes, he's probably going to play over Lucas Van Ness. They're going to have to change the defensive scheme a little bit. Maybe he's standing up more. Maybe Rashawn Gary's putting his hand in the dirt more. But what does it mean for the Cowboys? What guys are going to get opportunities? Because we said it, we like the way the Cowboys draft. They always do draft well. And we really liked this draft. And I think there was a player in this draft that now is going to get a lot of opportunities. Let's take a quick moment and talk about that before we jump off.
Yeah, Donovan Ezaraku impressed in training camp. They really like what he brings to the table, especially as a pass rusher. Second round pick out of Boston College. Probably should have went early first, depending on your board there. And they're excited about him. So he's going to step up now. He was perhaps looking at sort of the pass rush specialist role after obviously Micah Parsons. They had Marshawn Nealand. They really like James Houston as well. They signed a couple guys like Peyton Turner as well. Dante Fowler, a vet, is back in Dallas. So the plan was there to essentially bring Ezaraku on a more traditional path for young players. Hey, you're a pass rusher. You come in on passing downs, kind of get your feet wet. You're going to hit a rookie wall, but that's just kind of how it goes here. But you're going to grow into a starting edge rusher in the NFL. Now the options are he either takes on a bigger role as a starter, or they plug in a vet, which is what they like to do in Dallas. They really don't like to really hand things over to young players like that. In a Dante Fowler, and they'll look at him and say, well, he had, double-digit sacks a year ago, but the impact is not close to the same, and everyone knows it. So I think there's a slight uptick in value, or rather in time, for Donovan Ezaraku, and his development clock kind of speeds up a little bit. But I don't think it fundamentally changes his development arc, because I think the plan was always by year 2, he's going to be a starter. And I wouldn't be surprised if they still kind of keep him on maybe less of a pitch count. He gets more of a role, but he doesn't immediately step into a starting spot on that defense. And they do lean on the veterans a bit more because they do have numbers at that spot. It's just obviously the impact of Micah Parsons is not something you can replicate or just have coming off the bench. That just doesn't exist. But Ezaraku in particular, I think, is the big one. And then Kenny Clark steps into the one tech role. They really had nobody else there. Mozzie Smith, if you watched him and didn't know who he was or where he was drafted, and you just watched him this preseason, you talked about guys who stand out in a previous episode in the preseason and show they belong. Mozzie Smith just showed that he was just like everybody else that was playing in the third quarter of the final preseason game in August. It's just not there, and it's just not working out. So there was a big hole at one tech. And kind of what they're doing at edge, they're filling it with a veteran who we have not seen his best days in recent days. So how much better do you really get? You plug a hole, but do you add value and really make a difference? I think it's more just, putting chewing gum at a hole in the dam, but the dam still has fundamental cracks that need fixing. And you don't fix that with 2 late first round picks a year and 2 for now. It just doesn't work that way.
Yeah, but I think if you are playing all 22, Donovan Ezaraku, who is still available in some drafts that I'm in the 4th and 5th round,
by the way,
he just got a lot more valuable, right? So go get your shares of him. I would be surprised if he didn't come off the boards immediately now, because people are seeing the news. But okay, everybody, thank you for tuning in. Again, you could go to all-22.com, go to the App Store, whether you're on iPhone or Android. You could play all 22 on the app today. Please sign up. We love that you tuned in. Thank you. Have a great night.
Go.